So, this video is about making a car with prop suspension using ACF. So if you need to install ACF, that's like a totally different situation that you're going to have to figure out. But once you have ACF installed, what you're going to want to do is, I have S props here. I'm not using the basic PHX props, kind of garbage. But anyway, so what you want to do is get a base plate. I'm just going to use a 60 by 132. Put it a little ways up in the air, so that there's room to go under it and look at the underside. And I'm using precision alignment, and advanced ball socket, and a whole bunch of other tools. Basically, like, if it's up here in the tool menu, as well as ACF down here, you're gonna want it for this. So what I'm gonna do is hit this button in precision alignment, plane, hit pose, plus hit normal, and using the easy precision tool, I'm going to snap with the E key my view to the middle here on the top. Gonna left click, and then I'm gonna use plane, hit normal, and I'm going to left click on the side over here. It could be anywhere on the side, like over here. It has the same effect as going over here, but that makes the line point to the right. And so now I'm gonna start making the suspension, because most commonly, the most common thing that breaks is the suspension of any kind of vehicle. So I have this 6 by 42 by 6 block here. You can use a longer block if you want to. I actually don't know the effects of longer and shorter block. I would presume that a longer one would be stronger from how we're doing this, but I'm going to put it like that. So you snap your view with E to the edge there. I use the move tool. I left clicked to start the move from the corner of this piece, and then I left clicked on the corner of that piece to finish it. So like this, E, snap, left click, E, snap, left click, and then left click again. You can move your mouse to rotate it before you finish it with that last left click. So now I'm going to rotate it like this. After I pull it down 3 units, because I want the ride height to be that much, which is just the R key, and up here is the push-pull amount. You can change that, and it changes how much it pushes or pulls. And so now I will rotate. I will hit the bottom corner here, and this is where I'm gonna put the wheel as well later. So I'm gonna hit the bottom corner here, and I'm going to put this 30 degrees up. So that's 2 increments of 15 degrees. Rotation snap, it's 15. I'm going to do the same back here. And then I'm going to disable collisions on both of these because they're intersecting with this base plate. And I am going to right click. I'm going to hit R. And then once I've hit R, you go into rotation functions, and you hit mirror across plane, and we're going to select plane 1. Plane 1 is this plane right here. So if you have anything on this side of the plane and you do what I'm about to do, it will copy it, mirror it, and then put a duplicate in its place. So it looks kind of like this. So I have this down here, mirror across plane. That is selected with right click, and it's blue. Plane 1 for the selection. Hold shift and hit rotate entity. And now that prop has been moved, and there's a duplicate in its place, and the duplicate has collisions disabled, and now there's one on the other side. And I will, now that I just did that, I can do shift right click on this one, and it will do the exact same thing. And so now what I want to do is get a rope, make sure rigid is set, because then it acts like a spring. And I will snap my view to the center here, and then I will put the rope in front of it. Just somewhere in front of it like that. So that the rope then is connected between the push bar here and the base plate. And so then I will do this for all of these. Right now what we're doing is making the actual bit of the suspension that will push the springs away, the push bars away from the base plate when they hit a bump. So that there. It's important that you do this on each side, because that makes it more rigid and it's easier to to adjust later. By the way, you adjust the stiffness of the suspension by adjusting the weight. So right now it's 24. If you want to make it softer, you set like the push bar weight to like 12. General rule of thumb is to have the suspension softer in the rear and harder in the front, but that's just you know, general wisdom. Also, before you attach the wheels, you want to make sure that this plate, front of it, is facing north. You can tell which way is north by putting a spray on the ground. That didn't work. But you could put a spray on the ground, and the top of the spray will face north, and so that's how you tell which way. And that's important because ball socket advanced, this, like, you can set the angles for each axis so that the wheels are limited in their movement compared to the plate, and that is very important later on. But for now, I'm going to axis center this prop to the base plate on all of these. And you don't want to do this before you mirror, because if you do it before you mirror, then you will, what happens is it has the same constraint as was on the last prop. So when you constraint it and then you mirror it, the mirrored prop just shoots back to the previous place. And, or at least from my experience, it's done that, and that is not good. So now we have all of those axes created. I can advance dupe this, and then I can carry it out into the world. And then if I unfreeze this, perhaps maybe turn the weight up on the base plate so that you can visualize it. It bounces. And so now that we have that, we are going to attach the wheels. You can use, this is where make spherical comes in handy as well, because that prevents all sorts of wheel quackery from happening. So I'm just making like a little sports car here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a... So we're going to do a similar... We're going to use precision alignment for this, because precision alignment is, it's wonderful. But because we're using precision alignment, we can't mirror these things. So that's a wheel 30, right? Yeah, that's a wheel 30. So we've got our 4 wheels, and we're going to use precision alignment to attach the wheel. We're going to ball socket it, not advanced ball socket to limit the rotation, just a normal ball socket. We're going to no collide it with the base plate, since these already have collisions disabled. And we're going to make it spherical. And then it will be attached here, it'll be spherical, so it'll roll smoothly, and then we'll all be fine. So what we do is we take out precision alignment, and we hit point mass center up here. And that will select a point, and so we select point 1 down here. So we click on that, left click, primary mouse button, and now the point is selected in the middle of the wheel. And then we select point 2 down here, and we select point hit pose up here. And we go down to this, and we select the corner. You snap to it, and now that corner is selected, and it's right on the edge. And now we select point 2 over here and point 1 over here. So that point 1 is our first selected point, point 2 is our second selected point. Right click on the wheel. Point 1, point 2 selected here. And we hit move entity. And then the wheel is placed right there. And we are going to hit R and go into constraints, ball socket, point 1, point 2, no collide, that's fine. And then create constraint. And now, once we no collide this with the base plate and make spherical, we will have a wheel that is attached. Oh, it's not no collided. I forget that make spherical undoes constraints, except for ball sockets. It undoes advanced ball sockets, or at least it seems to, I think, but not regular ones, so that's fine. So Now we're going to repeat this process for all the wheels. So what we're going to do, this wheel, precision alignment, mass center, 0.1, point hit pose, 0.2, edge of this, right click, 0.1 here, 0.2 on the right, move entity, R, ball socket, 0.1 and 0.2, create constraint, make spherical, no collide. Then we're going to do the same over here. That's ball socket advance. I don't want that. You don't want to do ball socket advance yet. If you do that, you're gonna cry. Mass center, 0.1, 0.2, hit pose. Right click, 0.1, move entity, R, ball socket, create constraint. Make spherical. No collide. I think I no collided this one, but I'm just gonna be safe. And then this final one, mass center, hit pose. Right click, 0.1, move entity, R, ball socket, make spherical. No collide. Unselect that. And then we're done. For the wheels. So now I'm gonna area select this because I like area select. And now if we weigh the base down a little bit more, we have some wheels that are attached to the suspension pieces. And the wheels are rolling around right now, all in weird directions, but that's okay, we'll fix that later with advanced ball sockets. So now that we have all the suspension done, we can move on to creating the drivetrain, the driver's seat, the ACF, all the fun stuff now comes. And you saw how easy it was to get over the hard stuff. If there's like a piece of the suspension that is sagging particularly badly, or that like when you weigh the base plate down, it sags or is uneven or anything like that, redo this whole step. Maybe like check that your base plate is in line with the world angles. Hit shift while rotating. And that'll align stuff with world angles. So like this, E, shift, and now it's snapping to 45s. So now we get to the fun part. I should have said the thing about world angles in the beginning. I'm sorry for any beginners that missed that and were angry. But now we get to selecting the engine and gearbox and what's-its. Now, this is a kind of important since you want to be conscious of weight, because with this central prop design, thank you Spider0804 for inspiring the central prop design. I am giving massive props to that man since his tutorials are great, his creations are great. But I'm using the central prop design, so everything of importance, which is pretty much everything except like a parented body, is attached to the base plate. Like, except these wheels, which are attached to the suspension, but the suspension is attached to the base plate. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this a little sports car. I'm going to stick a rotary in it. No, I'm going to use a special engine, A, because they're absolutely amazing, but also because I get to show off fuel, because fuel is required for the special engines. Although the cast iron block is fairly weighty, a tiny V6, this one is lightweight and has lots of power, and it revs high, so I'm going to select this one. And I'm going to use precision just so I can put it straight on the body, so I'll snap it to wherever really on the bottom, and then snap it straight on there, because you want to have your center of mass, like, right in the middle. It can be a little bit forward or a little bit backward, but you want it right down the middle. You can get a tool called Mass Center, which you hold, use primary, secondary, and then you can see where the center of mass is right now. That's not the full center of mass because we just have the engine on here right now, but it comes in handy when trying to reduce weight and whatnot. And so move that down a little bit, that's fine. Weld this and disable collisions. Now, with ACF, if you adjust the weight of anything, even if you adjust it like upwards, that part is no longer functional but you can no collide them and they will function just fine, so you don't have to worry about that. I will then get a gearbox. I'm just going to use a 6-speed, and I will use a small 6-speed inline small because this doesn't produce that much torque. I will then put this about right here. I will sink that in a little bit so that the input shaft is above and the engine can go to it, and the output shaft is below. That'll go to the rear differential, and then the diff splits power between this wheel and this wheel. I will make this a 4-wheel drive car so that you can learn how to do that. Now with the ACF tool, right click, connected. Now before I do the differentials, I'm going to do fuel tanks. And fuel tanks, they hold fuel, and the special engines require fuel because of the ridiculous power to weight and what's nots and what's its. So you can select the size here. The first 2 digits are like the horizontal axes, so this one is 4 by 4, and the last digit is the vertical, so 2 this way. I'm gonna get a slightly smaller one. I'm gonna get a 2 by 4 by 2, if I can find it. And I'm gonna stick this in the back, partially for weight distribution and partially because that's where they go. Bam. Disable collisions, weld it. And then right click here and then right click here. Done. Link successful. Ooh! There we go. Alright, we're good. So that's still connected, but I've moved it up, so now it's not interfering with anything down here. So you just right-click on the engine and then on a fuel tank, and then everything is alright. Now, we attach a differential. I'm just going to attach a small differential. And we're going to need 2 differentials, one for the back, one for the front. But the front one, because this is all-wheel drive, we're going to have to make the final drive, not both gear 1 and final drive, but just final drive, a negative. It's the same value as the back, or it should be, but just a negative. And so we precision this part into the middle on the front here, like that. I'm going to disable collisions just for gits and shiggles. Weld it. Attach the one on the back. And then the one on the back has a positive final drive value. Disable collisions, weld it. Everything that is not the base plate, I disable collisions. Because it saves numerous no collide constraints, and it still allows collisions with like the wheels and the body and everything. Body? Frame, not body. The body is no collided, but anyway. Did I weld this? I think I did. So then, right-click, gearbox, that, right-click this, and then right-click, 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 right-click. So now we have all the ACF parts sorted, and we are going to get onto user input and wire mod. The fun part. And then once we're done with that, we're going to add some brakes and then hopefully be done with this thing. So now I'm going to get a seat. I'm just going to use a Jeep seat for this because what is life? That's why. Oh, I forget the frickin' E key. It puts you in the seat. But anyway, I will put this out there. And so that's the driver's seat now. I'm not going to have a passenger seat. I know I said the whole thing earlier about having the mass dead down the center. It doesn't need to be right down the center. It just needs to be close enough. But anyway, I'm going to then disable collisions, of course. Precision this upward a little bit. That will be important later, okay? Just precision it either up off of the base plate or like into the base plate so that the bottom is shutting out ever so slightly. And that will be important later for reasons that we will see. That's welded. I will go into wire mod because wire mod is an essential part of ACF. and all of that. And I'm going to grab the pod controller under vehicle control. And I will place one pod controller. Right click with the pod controller tool on the controller. And then on the seat. And that will link the seat to the pod controller. So now when I get in the seat, the pod controller lights up green and key inputs from this seat are being sent to the pod controller. That's what everything wires up to, is this pod controller. That's what user input, yes, you need this. This is essential part. If you don't have a speedometer, if you don't have a tachometer, if you don't have a fuel tank, if you're using an engine that doesn't require a fuel tank, which is basically like anything that is not a special engine, then you still need, like, if you don't have suspension, if you don't have, like, steering, you need this to be able to do anything. But anyway, now we move on to getting essential gates, because there is a throttle input to this engine, and that throttle input is on a scale of 0 to 100, but when you hit W in the pod controller, it outputs W as a value of 1, and so if you were to wire up throttle directly to W on here, then it wouldn't do anything, because it would just be idling, pretty much. So we will get first a constant value with values 100, 1, and 0. The 1 and 0 will come in handy later. This 36, that's just vestigial from another project, so I'm actually gonna slice that one off. And so now I'll put that there. I will grab gates, arithmetic, multiply. And I will put a multiply gate here, so that I can say input A is W, input B is 100, throttle is out. So now when you hit W, it will output a value of 1 to here, get multiplied to 100, and then put this to full throttle. And so that is very important to getting the engine moving. So now I will wire up a on-off key to the engine. And for this, I need a toggle gate. I'm trying to use as little E2 as possible here, which is why I'm using gates. Because some servers have limits on E2, but we're going to need at least one. So we put the toggle there. We then put the click, which is the button that actually toggles it on and off, to R, or at least that's my key of choice. We put the on value to 1 from the constant value, off value to 0. And so when it's off, it's 0. When it's on, it's 1. Then we put active on the engine to the output of the toggle. And then we put the active of the, like, this thing needs to be active all the time, basically. The fuel tank needs to be active all the time, especially when the engine's running. And so you can just put active to RPM. Actually, wait, no, this engine requires fuel, so you can put active to mass. Because that value won't change, really. Unless the engine gets destroyed, in which case your fuel tank is useless. But then your engine is also useless. That's fine. We will wire up gear up to mouse 1. Gear down to mouse 2. And so now we have power going through. We have control over the power. We have this supplies fuel. We can change the gears. So now what do we need? We need steering. That's what we need. We need steering. So open up expression 2, and I'm using EZ car steering. This is an E2 made by someone else, and there is a special setting in expression 2 that you need enabled for this to work, and that most servers have enabled. I've forgotten the setting. But, like, if you search, like, easy car steering not working or easy car steering whatever, like, you should be able to find it. I will put the turn limit to 30 degrees since that's, like, roughly about a normal limit for a normal car. Top speed turn limit will be 10 degrees. The top speed, where the turning radius will max out, or the amount that the wheels turn maxes out, that will be 100 kilometers an hour. Turn speed multiplier is basically how fast the wheels can get to the maximum amount of degrees at that speed. The higher you have this, the more controllable, like twitchy and controllable your car is going to be. If you have this at 1, it is going to be miserable to drive. I'm going to put this at 3 because that's like a good middle ground. I'm going to place this down. I'm going to wire chassis to the chassis, the base plate, chair to this, pod to the pod, and then here's the magic. It's advanced ball socket. I have a preset here. You must tick free movement. Don't have like friction on any of these or else it'll just make your car inefficient. I have X minimum and X maximum set to negative 180 and 180 degrees respectively. This allows free rotation, like how a wheel would usually rotate. So you just hit the wheel and you hit the base plate. And then that wheel, you could see before they were moving around like they were in space, but now these back wheels will be locked to only turn like this way. And it's very important in ball socket advanced. This is why axes aren't used here. Is because, well, A, free movement. I mean, that's like a really important setting, but also this Y minimum and Y maximum are like negative 0.1 and negative 0.1, and the same is for Z min and max. And that allows for a tiny little bit of slack so that the physics engine doesn't shit itself. And that is very important. And so now I'm going to advanced ball socket these with the same settings to this thing. So now they will still be able to turn like that way, but they will also turn with the easy car steering. And so now it's time to demonstrate this, really. There we go. So I'm gonna... The gearbox wasn't welded in, that's fine. I'll just weld it. So now I need to adjust the weight of the base plate to be higher than the engine, or the heaviest prop, so that all of the welds and everything are strong. So the suspension is a bit floppy, but we can fix that later. And now we get in, we hit R. Something is not right here. There we go. So, turn off. You can put active to the amount of fuel or to the capacity, and then it will turn on when the engine, or it'll be on while the engine's off, and so while the engine's on, it'll be available. So now we get in here, we hit R. We turn down the volume because ACF is bloody loud, and then we hit W. We can mouse 1 to go up in gears. And we can turn, and everything is fine. So now, we have one system to add. And that is gauges and brakes. And by gauges, I just mean tech screens. I'm sorry, but there's nothing fancy happening here. And so what we're going to do is get some props. I'm just going to go into the wheels and frames here because I like this little model, small wheel. Going to get 2 of these so that we can mirror them. Disable collisions. Put one you can just put them anywhere, really. I just like putting them up here because it's a nice aesthetic, I think. Aesthetic. This whole thing looks kind of garbage. But anyway, you do the mirror across plane. Shift. Bam. Shift, right click. Bam. So now we have all of these. And then you axis center. So no collide. Blah, blah, blah. All of these to the base plate. And then we get a wire weld constraint latch. This is what I do. It breaks occasionally. It is not the best way, but it is the way that I've figured out, and god dang it, it's the way that I'm going to do it for a while until I can figure out a better solution. So what I do is latch, click, click, place the controller, and we're going to place it right there. And so there. So now we have latch for all of these different discs, and we are going to get another toggle gate and an OR gate. So I'm just going to choose a different model set. It's coherent. So now we're going to get a toggle gate and an OR gate, and we're going to have... This will make sense later because brakes. So this toggle gate, click, is going to be space. On value is still 1, and off value is still 0. This OR gate is going to be this combined with S. And that will allow us to engage the rear brakes with a toggleable parking brake setting and with the S key. The front brakes we don't need to do this for because we can just set activate to S. Oh, get biscuits. Activate to S, and for these brakes we can put activate to the out of the OR gate. And then, this is the important part, we get our advanced ball socket, and we just put all the sliders down to negative 0.1 and 0.1. I have settings for this. Do make settings for this. This is very handy. Check free movement, and then we're going to do the exact opposite of what the wheels have. They have X minimum and X maximum set to, like, the max. We're going to have that set to the minimum, and we're going to have X friction. I'm going to turn that up to 13 for the front wheels. So these are all going to be free so that the front wheels can actually turn. I'm going to click this, and then this, and then this. For the front wheels, rear wheels, I mean, it's going to be slightly less. This, and then this, and then this. So now, these will turn with the wheels, but when the weld latch grabs onto them, the friction between the disc and the wheel is going to slow it down. Ah, smart. So now we paste this in. I forget to set the weight of the base plate. Excuse me for a moment. We go back out here, and we can start the car, and we can go forward. And now if we hit S, we slow down. And now if we hit spacebar, it will toggle that. And now I'm hitting W, and the rear wheels are dragging on the ground, and the front wheels are, you can see the discs are stuck. But now we have all of the components finished, and we have a fully functional car. Now we need gauges, and this is easy. I'm not even gonna bother with like a prop in front of the driver. I'm just gonna put speed, gear, RPM, and fuel in screens in front of the driver so that I can just look at it and it's there. Fuel. This is just... Please pardon my imperfectionate positioning of this garbage here. So now we will get a speedometer so that we can actually tell our speed. That's a wire mod thingy. Put it right there. Wire. Speed, kilometers an hour to kilometers an hour. Gear to the gearbox, current gear. RPM to RPM. And fuel to fuel. I will advance dupe this. Now we have this little car. We have RPM, we have speed, and we have a fuel reading. So now... we can see that we're topping out pretty quickly. And so we can make some on-the-fly adjustments to the gearbox once we find the gearbox in here. So now I can set the final drive to 1 and essentially double the length of all the gears. And you may want different gearboxes based on different requirements for an engine. Like if you're designing an engine for efficiency, or a car for efficiency, pardon me, you're going to want longer gears. If you're designing a sportier car like me, you're going to want shorter gears. And with this, I'm going to go test it at the drag strip. By the way, these brakes are not anti-lock brakes. Don't be surprised when you crash on a slippery hill. So, parking brake. And then I will shorten the length of 5th gear by reducing the slider to, say, 0.45. And now I will go on the drag strip. Let's see. And now we can see that this tops out at about 80 kilometers an hour. And so I could shorten the gearing further to increase that top speed, increase the usable RPMs, because it was maxing out at about 6,300, and the engine tops out at about 7,100, I do believe, but I believe that the power band is... well, no. Power band goes to 7,100, the red line is 8,000. Whew! But if you decrease the gear ratios, you will get quicker acceleration, you will use more of the gear. But if you decrease it too much, you will not be able to go the full speed. And so I will save this in here as ACF Sport 3. I have some earlier revisions of other cars, including a little monster that I made a few days ago. That is quite quick. It's powered by this Boxer 6. There is no fuel because this is not a special engine. It doesn't require fuel. I unfreeze this. It uses pretty much the same technology, except in the rear here, this is a solid axle, whereas this suspension is independent. The main difference between those is that solid axle, instead of the axis center being like on this side of the beam, it's on this side, so the axle can turn like that instead of turning like... oh, this actually uses a different style. Never mind. It turns like you saw rather than up and down in that axis. I don't know the words, but... anyway, this has no screens or anything because I'm a bellend. But it does have the independent suspension up front, solid axle in the back. It has the 4-wheel brakes and all the whatsits. The engine on is bound to the active in the seat on the pod controller. And this car has a top speed of about 100 kilometers an hour. It is also 4-wheel drive like the car I just made. And and it is much more pleasant to drive. But it understeers like a Jeebus. It is not that bad for off-roading, though. Especially because prop suspension doesn't have the nasty habit, unless you crash in on it sideways, of bouncing above where it's supposed to be and staying there. And so I can hit these bumps, and I have no fear of the suspension giving out. However, if I were to hit the wheel in sideways, say on those stacks of tires over there, then I would have real concern for this suspension caving in on itself. Like that. And so always add fenders to your cars. That's gonna be it for this video, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. I still don't have a closer. Send help.